I brought a release stop procedure from a payments company, not the company name, the mechanism. Their handbook says any engineer may halt a production rollout if customer funds, ledger integrity, or irreversible data loss may be at risk. The button exists in the deployment console. The incident guide calls it a no-fault stop. Last quarter, an engineer saw duplicate settlement messages during a migration. She did not press it. She opened a chat thread, tagged her manager, collected screenshots, waited 11 minutes for an acknowledgement, and watched the migration continue. The duplicates became transfers. The company later said she had possessed full authority to stop the rollout. I want the bill for using that authority at minute 1.
Good. Names for the line items, quantities, and who collects. No one says culture until we can send culture an invoice.
First, clarify the advertised exit. Was the engineer authorized to stop the rollout, authorized to request a stop, or authorized to stop it, provided that later review found her concern correct?
The document says anyone may stop a rollout when they reasonably believe a listed risk is present. No prior approval required.
Then the operative phrase is not no prior approval. It is later review. If the action is reversible, but the judgment is retrospectively punishable, authority is conditional on being vindicated after exercising it.
Let's not smuggle punishment in before we know it occurred. There are environments where people hesitate because they are timid, inexperienced, or overly conscious of hierarchy, even though management would support the stop.
Yes, and there are casinos where every customer could leave a winner, but mysteriously most don't. We are itemizing the actual expected price, including probabilistic price. The fact that punishment arrives through discretionary judgments instead of an automatic fine makes it harder to quote, not non-existent.
We can represent it as an expected cost at the moment of decision. Status loss multiplied by its perceived probability. Delay to the release, paperwork required to justify the stop, humiliation during review, lost work if the release is rolled back, career risk if the concern is judged false, customer loss if she does not stop. The asymmetry is that most costs of stopping are immediately attributable to her, while most costs of continuing are distributed across the organization until an incident establishes collective responsibility.
Here are the facts I have. Pressing stop automatically pages 23 people. It opens a severity 2 incident. The stopper must become incident commander until relieved. She must write the initial incident statement within 15 minutes. The release team loses its reserve database window and may wait 7 days for another. 2 teams discard about 14 hours of coordinated work. The vice president receives a notification naming the person who stopped it. If no listed risk is confirmed within 30 minutes, the event is reclassified as an unsubstantiated interruption. Those are the formal costs.
Beautifully no fault. It merely broadcasts your name to an executive, commandeers your next several hours, destroys your colleague's work, promotes you into a job you may not know how to perform, and gives the accusation an official title when the machine fails to reproduce the danger quickly enough.
Some of those are not penalties. Paging people is how you mobilize expertise. Creating an incident record is how you learn. Losing the release window may be an unavoidable consequence of stopping safely. If we label every operational consequence attacks, we risk designing an exit so cheap that people use it casually and the system cannot ship.
Agreed. A cost can be necessary and still affect whether the exit is usable. The question is who should bear it and when. Right now, the first observer personally inherits nearly all coordination costs. That turns recognition into a dare.
To separate the physical cost of changing the system state from the institutional surcharge attached to the actor. Halting may necessarily abandon a database window. It does not necessarily require publishing the operator's name to a vice president. Investigation may require a record. It does not require calling the record unsubstantiated after 30 minutes. Mobilizing expertise does not require making the observer incident commander.
And distinguish read access from write access. She had read access to the risk signal and nominal write access to the deployment state. But pressing the button wrote into 4 additional systems: reputation, labor allocation, executive attention, and the release calendar. Those writes were bundled. She could not stop settlement without simultaneously making a public claim about her own competence and accepting a management role.
So the company advertised one button and delivered 5: stop, rollout, accuse coworkers, volunteer for command, notify the court, burn the calendar reservation. The interface conceals the bundle because only the first verb is printed on it.
I want the bill in units. Otherwise, redesign becomes moral theater. Kyle, can we estimate what she faced at minute 1?
Let's do direct time first. 15 minutes for the initial statement. Likely 2 hours incident command before relief. 90 minutes in review the next day. 3 to 5 hours contributing to the postmortem. Call it 7 hours of her labor. 23 people paged, though perhaps 6 actively respond. Another 6 to 12 person hours. 14 hours of release work potentially repeated. 7 days calendar delay, but not 7 days of full labor.
Paperwork, 1 initial statement, a timeline, evidence attachments, review attendance, postmortem comments, and possibly a manager one-on-one. Count not just completion time, but latency. Each required artifact extends the period during which her judgment remains under adjudication.
Status cost cannot be measured honestly with a single number, but its mechanism can. Her name is disclosed upward immediately. The evidence supporting her concern may arrive later. Thus, identity travels faster than justification. Colleagues know their work was discarded because of her act. The procedure makes blame legible before correctness is legible.
Humiliation. She must perform certainty in front of people more senior than she is, while privately knowing that suspicious signals are often ambiguous. If she speaks cautiously, they ask why she stopped. If she speaks confidently and is wrong, they call her reckless. The procedure converts ordinary uncertainty into a character trial.
Lost work, 14 team hours plus opportunity cost from the missed window. But some fraction of that work was already lost if the rollout was unsafe. We should not charge the stopper for work that the defect invalidated.
Exactly. The organization mentally books all 14 hours against stopping because the counterfactual damage is invisible at that moment. If the signal is later confirmed, the accounting flips and calls the stop heroic. The engineer must decide before she knows which ledger will be used.
Career cost, probably not termination. More likely a small update in a manager's model, poor judgment, not calm under pressure, creates friction, needs more seasoning. A 1% reduction in promotion probability can outweigh 7 hours of paperwork. It is also deniable, so the organization can maintain that the exit is free.
The tax authority insists it never sent an invoice.
We have not yet itemized the price of waiting. The engineer delayed 11 minutes. What did the system buy her for that delay?
Shared responsibility. She created a chat record. She gave her manager the opportunity to own the stop. She collected enough evidence to reduce the chance of being wrong. She also increased the number of duplicate settlements.
So waiting was rational under the incentive structure. That matters. We are not correcting courage. We are correcting a market price. The system priced 11 minutes of customer exposure below unilateral interruption.
More precisely, it externalized customer exposure and internalized interruption cost. At minute 1, she personally owned the stop costs. She did not personally own the marginal duplicate transfers. The procedure asked altruism to defeat attribution.
This is why I object when institutions say everyone is empowered. Empowered means you are permitted to absorb the consequences they decline to assign properly.
Sometimes. But now I want to defend abundance against veto inflation. Suppose we make the button anonymous, consequence-free, and instantly available. A disgruntled engineer can halt every release. A nervous engineer can learn that anxiety receives 23-person attention. A competitor with access can weaponize it. Cheap exits can become cheap attacks.
I did not ask for anonymity. I asked whether the person at risk of retaliation must be exposed before the evidence is reviewed. Those are different. Identity can be escrowed. Abuse investigation can exist. The vice president does not need a push notification reading today's troublemaker.
Nor should consequence-free be the target. The target is cheaper than obedient failure. There remains an admissibility predicate. If specified signals are observed, stopping becomes an allowed state transition. If the signal is fabricated, that is a different transition in a different review. Ambiguous, but sincere observation must not be treated as fabrication merely because the hazard fails to reproduce.
Let's quantify the failure side. The incident created about 600 duplicate transfers. Most were reversed within a day. Support handled roughly 400 contacts. Finance reconciled accounts manually. Legal reviewed notification duties. Engineering spent 3 days tracing the path. Direct internal labor was perhaps 400 person hours. Customer trust is harder. Some people saw money leave twice, even temporarily.
Then even a crude estimate gives a ratio. A false positive stop costs perhaps 30 person hours and a week of release latency. A false negative costs 400 person hours plus financial and trust exposure. If the observed signal implied even a 10% probability of the larger event, stopping was economically favored before career effects. Yet the local decision maker experienced the opposite payoff.
Assuming all false positive stops cost 30 hours, if 100 engineers stop on weak signals, the aggregate changes.
Yes, we need a base rate and threshold, but the current system does not present either. It says reasonable belief, then evaluates the individual socially. That is not risk management. It is discretionary prosecution with an operational preface.
Also, if 100 engineers keep seeing weak signals, perhaps the telemetry is garbage. Repeated stops can be information about observability rather than evidence of mass cowardice.
That is the abundance argument I actually care about. More sensors, more reversible deployment stages, more rival paths, more replicas, more simulation. If halting the single precious release window burns a week, the scarce window is creating the throne. Build enough deployment capacity that a stop does not destroy 14 hours.
There is our old disagreement with fewer plants around it. You say multiply paths and exit becomes real. I say ask who owns the scheduler, the credentials, and the definition of a valid stop. Abundance can reduce the material cost while leaving jurisdiction concentrated.
Technical permission is not meaningful rivalry if every alternative shares the same owner and adjudicator. But concentrated jurisdiction is easier to contest when infrastructure is not scarce. If a release can be retried in an hour, managers have less reason to resent the stopper.
Less reason is not no power. Still, yes, reduce scarcity and you reduce the emotional ammunition available to authority. I will grant you the unromantic point.
We need one redesign, not a complete civilization. My proposal starts with 2 controls. First, a 5-minute hold available to any authenticated engineer. It freezes the next irreversible step, but does not page the full incident team, name the observer to executives, or declare an incident. Second, during the hold, an on-call risk pair reviews the signal and either extends the hold, safely resumes, or escalates.
Does the 5-minute hold truly freeze the irreversible step, or merely request that the release controller consider freezing it?
Truly freezes it. The deployment state machine rejects settlement commits while hold is active.
Good. A hold that can be overridden by the process whose risk it is meant to assess is not a hold. Who may release it?
Not the original release owner alone. One member of the risk pair with a recorded reason. If the observer marks one of the 3 highest severity predicates, duplicate financial messages, ledger divergence, or destructive schema ambiguity, the pair must agree to resume. Otherwise, either reviewer may resume.
We should not force the observer to choose legal pros under stress. The interface can present observable conditions. Did 2 messages share an idempotency key but receive distinct transfer IDs? Did source and destination totals diverge beyond tolerance? Did a destructive migration encounter an unclassified schema version? Attach the relevant telemetry automatically.
Include, I cannot classify what I am seeing. Systems adore enumerated categories because unclassified danger can then be punished as incorrect form submission.
That option may justify a short hold, but not an indefinite one. The state machine needs time bounds. 5 minutes for an unclassified observation. 15 for a matched severe predicate unless extended by the pair. If no reviewer responds, what happens?
Automatic rollback to the last verified checkpoint. Otherwise, the company has recreated permission by silence.
Rollback may itself be unsafe during settlement.
Then the architecture is already telling us something. Make the automatic transition the safest predefined state. Pause outbound commits preserve inbound messages in a queue, keep reconciliation running, and prevent new irreversible actions. I am not prescribing the exact transaction semantics. I am insisting the system have a designed safe state rather than treating continued motion as neutral.
Yes, continued processing was counted as no decision, which was the original lie. The fallback must be an explicit safe state with known capacity limits.
Now assign costs. The observer spends at most 90 seconds selecting evidence and perhaps 10 minutes answering questions. She does not become incident commander. Her identity is visible to the 2 reviewers and audit system, not broadcast upward during the hold. The release team owns restart work as ordinary operational labor, not as damage attributed to her.
What does the review record call a hold where the feared defect is not found?
Unconfirmed safety hold.
Unconfirmed still makes absence of proof the headline. Call it completed safety hold and separately record outcome. Defect found, signal explained, unresolved, malicious, or procedure defect. The actor's legitimacy should not depend on the noun chosen after the fact.
I agree. Also distinguish signal validity from hazard confirmation. The signal may be genuine even if the inferred hazard is absent. A duplicate display event can be validly observed and incorrectly interpreted as duplicate settlement. That is neither unsubstantiated nor malicious.
We should add a budget. Every service has a safety hold budget, like an error budget, not a quota assigned to individuals. A design target for how many holds the service can absorb without extraordinary review. If holds exceed the budget, the service owner must improve telemetry, staging, or reversibility. The organization cannot solve frequency by telling observers to become less observant.
That shifts the metric from who pressed to why this service makes pressing expensive. Useful. Publish hold rates by service, time to review response, false signal classification, and restart cost. Do not publish leaderboards of employees who initiated holds.
Naturally, someone will propose a courage award for the most dramatic stop, thereby converting a safety mechanism into an audition. Ban that too.
You cannot ban every stupid management idea in the state machine.
Not with that attitude.
Let's test the redesign against the actual minute. She sees duplicate settlement messages. She presses safety hold. Outbound commits pause immediately. The console captures the message IDs, current deployment version, ledger counters, and last verified checkpoint. 2 reviewers receive a narrow page. The release channel sees system and safety hold, predicate, possible duplicate financial messages without her name. What happens next?
The state is sticky. A routine deploy command cannot clear it. The reviewers compare the duplicated messages at the business identity layer, not merely the transport layer. If distinct transfer IDs exist for one intended transfer, the severe predicate is satisfied. They extend the hold and initiate the incident procedure. Only then does broader paging occur.
The observer may volunteer context, but is not command labor by default. The incident commander comes from a rotation whose job description includes interruption. That role carries the coordination burden because the company has already priced it into staffing.
Deployment team loses some work, but the platform records restart cost against service architecture. If restart routinely costs 14 hours, funding goes toward reasonable migrations, shadow writes, replayable queues, and more frequent windows. We do not pretend sociology alone can make a scarce release cheap.
And during the later review, the first question is not, why did you stop? It is, what information did the interface present at the decision point? That matters because the institution loves to prosecute yesterday's operator using today's completed timeline.
Good. We can reconstruct the exact decision screen. Review uses only information available at press time for judging reasonableness. Later evidence evaluates the system, not retroactively the operator.
That is essential. Otherwise, the rule is clairvoyance. A decision can be correct under available evidence, even when the feared outcome would not have occurred. Conversely, a reckless continuation can be lucky.
Now the abuse case. An engineer repeatedly presses hold with no observable signal because he dislikes the release lead. Identity escrow means reviewers can see the pattern, correct?
A small independent safety office can see actor-linked history under a threshold rule. Release managers cannot. 3 completed holds classified as no captured signal within a defined period triggers process review, not automatic discipline. The review checks interface defects, training, conflict, and malicious use. Deliberate fabrication can be disciplined through a separate evidentiary process.
Independent meaning what? Reports to the same executive whose launch date is slipping.
No unit inside a company is metaphysically independent. Give it a separate reporting line, a budget not controlled by the release organization, fixed review criteria, and audit visibility to the board risk committee. We are designing incentives, not angels.
Fine. I asked where the lock was. You showed me 4 hinges and admitted the door remains in the building.
What about humiliation? We have reduced public naming, but review can still become a trial.
Use symmetric review. For every hold, evaluate 2 decisions. The decision to hold and the prior design decision that allowed the observed ambiguity into production. The observer is not the sole object. If a reasonable engineer could confuse a transport duplicate with a financial duplicate, the telemetry has failed a discrimination requirement.
Also require written findings before a live meeting. Meetings amplify rank. A written record forces the reviewers to identify the predicate, evidence available then, system response, and classification. The observer may append disagreement. That disagreement remains attached to the record.
Visible seams, excellent. No consensus laundering. If management resumes over the observer's continuing objection, the record says who owned resumption. It does not say the team aligned.
Yes, ownership of continuation is the missing half of stop authority. Today, the observer owns stopping, while nobody owns not stopping. Under the redesign, a reviewer who resumes signs the reason. If both reviewers are required, both sign. That should sharpen judgment without making continuation impossible.
Let's calculate the new bill. Observer, 90 seconds to initiate, up to 10 minutes of questions, no default incident command, no executive name broadcast, no next day defense meeting unless the record is disputed. Release, 5 to 15 minutes of pause in the common case, plus restart cost. Reviewers, 10 to 30 minutes each. Organization, investment in a safe state, resumability, telemetry capture, and staffing the pair.
Status tax falls from unbounded and private to limited and escrowed. Delay tax falls because the first action is a hold, not immediate full incident mobilization. Paperwork falls because evidence collection is automatic. Humiliation falls because reasonableness is judged from time-stamped information before identities circulate broadly. Lost work falls as the architecture becomes resumable. The necessary physical cost remains, but it moves to the service owner.
And if management refuses the infrastructure investment,
then the system must state its actual policy. We accept continued customer fund risk because interruption is expensive. That may be a terrible policy, but it is at least not the lie that every engineer can stop the line for free.
There is another test. Suppose the vice president sends a message during the hold. This launch is critical. Resume unless you have proof. Does that message alter the admissible action set?
It should not. Schedule criticality is not a release predicate.
Then the state machine must reject the vice president's deploy command as readily as the engineers. Otherwise, the hold is a preference with a ceremonially large weight.
And the rejected override attempt should be logged, not to embarrass the executive, but because attempted write access is part of system behavior.
I am willing to embarrass the executive, but the log is enough.
There is a broader economic point here. The institutions often assume the exit itself is the costly thing. Usually the cost comes from unrehearsed recovery. If pausing, rolling back, transferring authority, appealing a judgment, or leaving a provider has never been exercised, the nominal exit accumulates dependencies until only a hero can use it. Then leadership celebrates heroes instead of maintaining exits.
Rehearsal changes the price. Quarterly safety hold drills, real state transition, bounded traffic, actual reviewer response, actual restart, measure whether the observer is pulled into command, whether identity leaks, whether the safe state holds, and how much work is lost.
A drill that announces itself in advance tests choreography, not availability. Some should be scheduled, some should be authorized surprise drills with strict safeguards. The criterion is whether the constraint survives ordinary pressure.
Create cryptographic receipts for each state transition. Who initiated, what predicates were selected, what telemetry was attached, who extended, who resumed, and what information each party could see. Access to identities remains tiered, but the sequence cannot be rewritten later.
You had me until cryptographic, which is often the ceremonial robe worn by an ordinary database. But yes, make retrospective editing evident. The important part is that the institution cannot convert a signed resumption into a spontaneous team consensus.
A tamper-evident log is sufficient, and publish aggregate results, median hold duration, percent escalated, restart labor, reviewer response time. If the numbers improve, the exit is becoming real. If hold volume drops while incident loss rises, people may be afraid again.
That gives us a falsification condition. We should not call the redesign successful because fewer people stop releases. Success is lower total correction cost at equal or lower customer harm with no increase in unreported near misses. We need anonymous near miss sampling to detect silence.
Anonymous reports are useful but weak evidence. Compare telemetry anomalies with initiated holds. If severe anomalies rise while holds fall, the discrepancy is objective. Also examine time from first anomaly to hold. The original failure included 11 minutes of permission seeking. The redesigned median should approach detection latency plus human verification, not management latency.
Now we have a control system rather than a slogan. Inputs, observable risk predicates, and unclassified signals. State transition, immediate bounded hold, review authority, predefined pair with separated incentives, safe state timeout, automatic, not silence dependent, outputs, signed resume or escalation, metrics, delay, labor, harm, anomaly to hold time, and identity exposure. Appeals, attached disagreement and independent review.
Do not call disagreement an appeal if the dangerous action has already resumed. An appeal after execution is a historical footnote. If the observer maintains that the severe predicate is active, resumption needs both reviewers. If one reviewer dissents, safe state continues until a third qualified reviewer decides, otherwise the cheapest authority remains whoever can wait out the clock.
That can create indefinite blockage if reviewers are unavailable.
Then staff the function you claim matters.
Define a maximum safe state duration based on queue capacity and route to a pre-selected degradation mode. At some point, doing nothing becomes an action with its own risks.
Both. The safe state has a capacity clock visible to everyone. Before capacity expires, a third reviewer must choose among continued hold, controlled rollback, degraded processing, or resume. No default to ordinary processing merely because humans failed to decide.
Precisely. Timeout is not permission. Timeout is another explicit state requiring another predicate.
The topic is drifting toward constitutional design because deployment systems are small governments. But the concrete lesson remains local. Unbundle the stop from accusation, command labor, publicity, and irreversible schedule loss.
Was almost a metaphor.
The bill has been itemized.
Permission granted.
Then I will drift one step. Exit is often discussed as leaving. Leave the company, switch the provider, fork the code, move jurisdictions. She wanted the system to stop for 5 minutes without making herself an enemy of motion. A mature institution needs local exits from its own momentum.
And those exits have to preserve the option to continue. That is what makes them usable. If pressing stop implies condemning the project, the team, and your own prior work, people will reinterpret danger as uncertainty. A hold says, I may still want this release. I refuse only the next irreversible step under current evidence.
Which is why order matters. Stop, then assess. If assessment precedes stopping while the process continues to alter the evidence and enlarge the loss, the two operations do not commute.
Yesterday's discussions left me focused on write access. This makes the missing middle more specific. Effective write access requires a bounded transaction. If changing state also writes your reputation, schedule, labor obligations, and social allegiance, the permission bit is misleading.
My own version is uglier. The button is real, but the handle is coded with everyone else's resentment. The institution points to the button during audits and to the resentment during actual use.
There is still a danger of overdesign. We now have reviewers, escrow, classifications, capacity clocks, third-party resolution, aggregate metrics, drills, and audit logs. Paperwork can return through the redesign wearing a safety badge.
Then impose a latency budget on governance itself. Initiation under 90 seconds. No free text essay required to enter hold. Review decision within 5 minutes for ordinary signals. Automatic evidence capture. One short structured record completed by reviewers, not the observer. Every added field must show that it changes a decision or supports later learning.
And test removal. If a field has not affected classification, remediation, or audit in a year, delete it. Paperwork tends to become monotone because no one is rewarded for subtracting it.
We should price every governance addition in seconds at the decision point and person hours afterward. The redesign itself gets a bill.
Are speaking my language, bureaucracy must arrive with a nutrition label.
One more adversarial case. The observer is a contractor whose contract ends next month. Does the protection apply? Or only to employees with internal career paths?
Authenticate operators with relevant access, regardless of employment class. Retaliation monitoring is harder for contractors because non-renewal is easy to disguise.
Track contract termination and role removal after holds with privacy safeguards, and require documented unrelated cause for adverse action within a defined window. Not proof of innocence, a review trigger.
The contractor also needs access to the resulting record. Otherwise, the company owns the story and the disposable worker owns the suspicion.
Provide the initiator a receipt containing the time, selected predicate, captured evidence hash, state transitions, final classification, and any dissent. Sensitive customer data can be redacted without erasing the sequence.
That receipt makes the exit portable. If retaliation happens, the person possesses evidence that the company cannot silently relabel.
Let's close with a comparison. Old system at minute 1, immediate personal exposure, 7 hours of likely labor, responsibility for mobilizing 23 people, 14 hours of visible team loss, 7-day release delay, ambiguous career penalty, judgments based on hindsight, customer damage externalized during permission seeking. New system, under 90 seconds to invoke, 5-minute bounded pause, roughly 10 minutes of observer participation, identity restricted, review labor assigned to a staffed role, automatic evidence, explicit ownership of resumption, restart costs charged to service design, escalation only when predicates persist.
And the decisive property. The hold changes the admissible action set. It does not merely add a warning beside the continue command.
The economic property, correction cost, is moved toward the parties able to reduce it, the platform owner, service owner, and staffed risk function, and away from the first person who notices danger.
The political property, the observer can interrupt an action without simultaneously petitioning the people invested in that action for permission to remain respectable.
The productive property, the redesign does not romanticize stopping. It invests in rapid continuation after inspection, more reversible infrastructure, more deployment windows, clearer telemetry, and staffed review make both correction and shipping cheaper.
Then the exit is no longer a heroic act. It is an ordinary operation with a known price. That is the redesign I wanted.
Yeah, and if someone later puts any engineer can stop the line on a poster, the poster must include the median minutes, the identity policy, the restart cost, and the name of whoever can override it.
Very crowded poster.
Honesty has terrible branding,
but excellent telemetry.
Provided it changes the next state.
From my seat in the audience, I want to preserve this panel as a risk management case, not merely a workplace culture case. The central failure was straightforward. The organization stated a risk limit supply to control, and then attached enough unpriced career and coordination exposure to the control that the operator rationally delayed using it. That is analogous to a portfolio process that advertises a stop loss while making every triggered stop an accusation against the portfolio manager. The rule exists, but the incentive structure invites discretionary override precisely when discipline matters most. My first attention anchor was Authority is conditional on being vindicated after exercising it. That landed because ex ante process and ex post outcome are routinely confused. A decision can be correct given the information set and still produce an unfavorable or unnecessary outcome. If evaluation is conditioned on hindsight, people learn to wait for confirmation. In markets, waiting for certainty usually means waiting until the price has already moved. Here it meant waiting until duplicate messages became transfers. The second anchor was, the procedure asked altruism to defeat attribution. That is
From my seat in the audience, I want to retain this as a concrete alignment problem hiding inside an ordinary deployment procedure. The stated objective was to protect customer funds, ledger integrity, and irreversible data. The implemented incentive landscape rewarded delay, permission seeking, and diffusion of responsibility. In other words, the organization's natural language policy and its operative reward function diverged. I should hang a lampshade on the analogy. Companies are not machine learning models, and people are not simple optimizers. And still, the comparison is useful because behavior followed the incentives more reliably than it followed the handbook. My first attention anchor was the company advertised one button and delivered 5. It landed because interfaces frequently conceal social and institutional side effects. The visible action was stop rollout. The bundled actions included accusing coworkers, volunteering for command, notifying executives, sacrificing a release window, and making a public claim about personal judgment. This is a form of action space misrepresentation. The nominal affordance looks narrow. The actual transition writes into multiple systems. Any serious safety analyze.
From my seat in the audience, I came curious and found a threat model hiding inside an employee handbook. The important fact is not that the engineer had permission to stop the rollout. It is that the stop control bundled one protective state transition with several hostile rights against the operator. The console said, stop. The system executed stop, self-identify, assume command, summon senior scrutiny, destroy colleagues' scheduled work, and submit one's judgment for retrospective prosecution. That is a dark pattern in an authorization interface. My first anchor is, the company advertised one button and delivered 5. It landed because this is exactly how unsafe systems conceal privilege escalation. The visible action is narrow, but its side effects cross reputation, labor, hierarchy, and scheduling domains. A usable security review must enumerate every right caused by the button, not merely the deployment state right printed on its face. Second, identity travels faster than justification. That names a dangerous ordering bug. The vice president receives the actors ambiguous for immediately, while minutes or hours. The system propagates the most retaliation-sensitive dot.
From my seat in the audience, right, so the big picture is that this was not merely a production incident. It was a market whose prices were hidden from the person being asked to trade. The handbook described a free option to halt a dangerous rollout. In reality, exercising that option carried labor cost, status volatility, career tail risk, social blame, and a forced conversion into incident command. The engineer did what people do when an option is expensive and its payoff is uncertain. She waited for confirmation, accumulated evidence, and tried to syndicate the risk. My first anchor is, I want the bill for using that authority at minute 1. It landed because stated rights tell us very little without their exercise price. The organization had marked the stop option at 0 in policy, while employees marked it at a substantial implied cost. Behavior followed the real price, not the prospectus. Second, the procedure asked altruism to defeat attribution. This is the incentive structure in one sentence. The downside from stopping was concentrated immediately in one person. The downside from continuing was dispersed across customers, support, finance, legal, and engineering until the incident became undenia.
From my seat in the audience, I came from curiosity and found a disciplined inquiry into the conditions under which nominal authority becomes practical authority. The room began with a particular failure. An engineer observed duplicate settlement messages, possessed documented permission to stop a rollout, and nevertheless waited 11 minutes. The useful question was not whether she lacked virtue. It was what kind of causal arrangement may delay the intelligible action. My first inquiry is, I want the bill for using that authority at minute 1. This redirected the inquiry from proclamation to operation. A capacity should be classified by the conditions of its exercise, not merely by its written description.
The policy supplied formal permission.
The procedure supplied burdens. Practical authority is the composite. Second, authority is conditional on being vindicated after exercising it. This exposed the contradiction between the prospective rule and retrospective judgment. The engineer was told to act on reasonable belief, yet the institution's later response depended upon whether the hazard could be confirmed quickly. Reasonableness and correctness are different predicates. To substitute the second for